What if the reason your life hasn't changed is because you keep doing what 99% of people are comfortable doing? And what if the thing that could change everything is something you've been avoiding this entire time? Not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable. Because deep down, you already know what it is. That one thing you keep delaying, that decision you keep pushing to someday. Yeah, that one. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your life, right now, is a reflection of what you've been willing to tolerate. Not your potential, not your dreams, your standards. And most people, they don't raise them. They adjust to comfort. They stay busy, but not effective. They stay distracted, but feel productive. And slowly, without realizing it, they build a life they never actually chose. Now here's where it gets real. Because at some point, you start noticing something. You're tired, but not from doing too much. You're tired from doing things that don't matter. Scrolling, delaying, overthinking, telling yourself, I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow keeps moving. And that's when it hits you. This isn't a time problem. It's a decision problem. Because the truth is, you don't need more time. You need a different standard. Now wait. Before you brush this off, this next part matters more than you think. Because what I'm about to say is what separates the 1% from everyone else. The 1% don't do more. They do what others avoid. That's it. Not smarter, not luckier. Just more willing to face discomfort. To sit in silence instead of distraction. To work when it's boring. To show up when they don't feel like it. And here's the part nobody likes to admit. You already know what you should be doing. You're not confused. You're resisting. Because doing it means becoming someone different, more disciplined, more focused, more honest with yourself. And that's scary, because it removes your excuses. Let me ask you something. If someone watched your daily habits for a week, no words, just actions, what would they say your priorities are? Be honest. Because that answer is your real life. Not what you say you want, what you're actually building. Now here's where the shift begins. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You realize you've been negotiating with yourself. I'll do it later. I'll start when I feel ready. I just need the right mood. But the truth? You're never going to feel ready. And waiting for motivation is just a socially acceptable way of avoiding responsibility. Yeah, that one stings. But it's also freeing. Because if motivation isn't required, then what is? Standards. The moment you stop asking, do I feel like it? And start saying, this is what I do now. Everything changes. Because now it's not optional. It's identity. And identity is powerful. Now think about this. People who go to the gym consistently don't wake up excited every day. They just don't question it anymore. It's who they are. Same with people who stay focused, who build something meaningful, who actually follow through. They removed the debate and replaced it with a rule. This is what I do, no matter what. Simple, but not easy. Because this is where 99% stop. Right at the edge of discomfort, right before growth begins. And this is the exact moment that defines your future. Do you go back to comfort? Or do you step into something harder, but meaningful? Which one are you choosing right now? Comfort or control? Don't answer fast. Think about it. Because your next decision, even a small one, is shaping the person you're becoming. And here's what most people don't realize. You don't suddenly become disciplined. You prove it in small, quiet moments, when no one is watching, when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when quitting would be easier. That's where your real identity is built. Now here's where things change. Because once you understand this, you stop chasing big breakthroughs and start focusing on small, non-negotiables, daily actions, done regardless of mood. And that's exactly what 99% won't do. Not because they can't, but because they won't stay consistent long enough. So the question isn't, can you do it? It's, will you keep doing it when it's no longer exciting? Because that's the real test. And this next part might make you uncomfortable, but it might also be the thing that changes everything. Here's the part nobody tells you. The moment you decide to do what 99% won't do, your life doesn't suddenly get easier. It actually gets harder, at least in the beginning. Because now you're going against your own patterns, your own habits, your own comfort. And your brain? It doesn't like that. It wants familiar. It wants easy. It wants safe. So it starts negotiating again. Just skip today. You deserve a break. You'll do it later. And if you're not aware, you'll listen, like you always have. But this time, something feels different, because now you see it. You recognize the voice, and that's powerful, because awareness is the first step to control. Now wait, this is where it gets interesting, because most people think discipline is about forcing yourself, but it's not. It's about removing the option to quit. Think about it. When something is non-negotiable, you don't argue with it. You just do it. Like brushing your teeth. You don't wake up and debate it. You just go. So what if you treated your goals the same way? Not as something you try to do, but as something you simply do. No discussion, no emotions involved, just execution. Now be honest. How many times have you relied on motivation and failed? Yeah, same. Most people won't admit this part. They think they're inconsistent because they lack motivation. But the truth is, they rely on it too much, and motivation is unreliable. It shows up when it wants and disappears when you need it most. So if your entire system depends on motivation, you've already lost. Now here's where the shift happens. You stop chasing motivation and start building systems. Simple systems, not complicated, not perfect, just repeatable. Because systems don't care how you feel, they just run. And when you follow a system, you reduce decision fatigue, you remove friction, and you make progress automatic. Now think about this. What if your day was designed so that doing the right thing was easier than doing the wrong thing? How different would your life look? Because right now, it's probably the opposite. Distractions are easy. Focus is hard. Scrolling is instant. Progress is delayed. So of course you choose the easier option. That's not weakness. That's environment. And this is the part 99% ignore. They try to change their life without changing their environment. But your environment is stronger than your willpower, every time. So instead of relying on discipline alone, you redesign your surroundings, you remove distractions, you create triggers, you make your goals visible, you make it harder to fail and easier to win. Simple, but powerful. Now here's a question.
Why do we keep choosing what hurts us long-term for what feels good short-term? Why do we trade our future for temporary comfort? Think about it. No answer yet? Just sit with it. Because this question, if you answer it honestly, can change everything. Now here's what most people realize too late. Every small decision is a vote for the person you're becoming. Skip the work? That's a vote for the version of you that quits. Show up anyway? That's a vote for the version that follows through. And over time, these votes stack until one identity wins. So the real question isn't, will this matter? It's, who am I becoming by doing this? That's the lens. That's the shift. And once you start thinking like this, you can't go back. Because now, every action has weight. Now here's where it gets real again. Because at some point, you're going to feel tired. Not physically, mentally. You'll question if it's worth it, if you're making progress, if anything is actually changing. And this is where most people quit. Not because it's too hard, but because it's too slow. They expect instant results, and when they don't see them, they assume it's not working. But growth doesn't work like that. It's invisible at first, silent, boring, until one day it's undeniable. But only if you stayed consistent long enough. So let me ask you something. Are you willing to keep going even when there's no visible reward? Or do you need proof first? Because if you need proof, you'll quit too early and end up right back where you started. This next part is where everything starts to come together, and it might challenge how you see yourself completely.
Don't let that be you. Because this moment, right here, is quieter than you think. No dramatic music, no big announcement. Just a choice, a small one, but powerful. Because this is where your life starts to split, not into two obvious paths, but into two patterns. One where nothing changes, and one where everything slowly does. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Your life won't change in one big decision. It will change in the decisions you repeat, daily, quietly, when no one is watching. And this is the part that scares people, because it means there's no shortcut, no hack, no sudden breakthrough. Just you and your standards, again and again. But here's the flip side. That's also what makes it simple. Because you don't need to fix everything. You just need to win today. That's it. Not your whole life, not the next 5 years. Just today. And then tomorrow, you do it again. Now let me ask you something real. What would your life look like if you actually trusted yourself? If when you said, "I'm going to do this," you actually did it. No hesitation, no delay, just action. Because that's what confidence really is. Not feeling good, but trusting yourself to follow through. And right now, if you're being honest, that trust might be broken. Not completely, but enough that you second-guess your own promises. You say you'll start, and then you don't. You plan, but don't execute. And slowly, you stop believing yourself. That's the real cost. Not lost time, lost self-trust. But here's the good part. you can rebuild it. Not with big goals, but with small proofs. Keeping one promise, then another, until your brain starts to believe, this time is different. And once that belief builds, everything gets easier. Because now you're not fighting yourself, you're aligned. Now this next thought might hit deeper than expected. What if the life you want is actually available to you, but it requires a version of you you haven't been willing to become? Think about that. Because most people want the result without becoming the person. They want success without discipline, focus without sacrifice, clarity without discomfort. But it doesn't work like that. You don't get the life without becoming the identity. And becoming that identity means doing what 99% won't do, consistently, even when it's boring, even when it's slow, even when no one notices. Especially then, because that's where it counts. Now here's the final shift. You stop asking, how do I feel? And start asking, what does the person I want to become do right now? And then you do that, immediately. No overthinking, no delay, just action. Because that question eliminates confusion. It cuts through emotion, and it puts you back in control. Now pause for a second. If you kept living exactly like you are for the next year, where would you end up? Same habits, same patterns, same frustration, just with less time. And that's the part no one wants to face, because time keeps moving, whether you change or not. So this is your moment, not a perfect one, but a real one, to decide that you're done being part of the 99%, not by saying it, but by proving it in what you do next, right after this. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Do something small, something uncomfortable, something that moves you forward. And let that be the first proof that you're different. Because you don't need motivation, you need a decision. And once that decision is real, everything else follows. If this makes sense, say something. Not for anyone else, for yourself. Because this isn't about watching another video. It's about becoming someone who finally follows through. If this hit home, don't just scroll. Subscribe, and start becoming the version of you that 99% will never become.